Hey guys, welcome to my channel. We are reading The Collected by K.R. Alexander, and I did get permission from Scholastic to read this. I am reading chapter 22, 23, 24, 25, 25, I think, 25, 26, 27, 28, so a lot of chapters in this one. So, here we go. Alrighty. It's gonna be a longer video. Chapter 22. Josie avoided me for the rest of the morning. I kept trying to corner her and ask a question, but she avoided me at every chance. Either that, or she stayed close to Mom. It was clear I'd rattled her, just as it was clear that I wasn't going to learn anything else from her. I still wanted to know about Clara and Vanessa, but Mom was in no state to answer questions. She had been crying after finding a bunch of her baby pictures. I didn't want to push her. The hours dragged on in silence. I didn't trust turning the radio on again, and no one was talking, which meant I spent the time asking myself the same questions over and over, as if I might eventually shake out an answer. I couldn't. By the time Mom said that she and Josie were going to drop off stuff at the donation center in town, I was ready to explode with frustration. I still couldn't remember anything else that Clara or Vanessa or Beryl save for a vague assurance that they had existed. I helped Mom load a few big boxes into the back of Grandpa's old beat-up pickup truck. Mom asked if I wanted to come with them, but the thought of having to sit between Josie and Mom for a long, bumpy ride into town sounded like the last thing I wanted to do. I would rather be alone. That's what I was used to being. And it was clear neither of them wanted me around anyway. I watched them drive off from the front porch. Last night's storm had turned into a lovely sunny summer day. Even the woods no longer looked as creepy as they did the night before. It should have been pretty, but the moment the truck disappeared around the corner, a great heavy weight settled on my shoulders. The weight of emptiness, the knowledge that Grandma wasn't going to step out beside me with the sun, tea, or more stories. It felt like the big house behind me was settling on my shoulders, all dust and wood and secrets. I knew if I went back inside, it would suffocate me. I had to stay outside. I had to walk. I trudged around to the back of the house. The old playset was still back there, but badly weathered and probably no longer stable. It felt like forever ago that Josie and I had played there. The memory is such a blur. I could almost believe it never happened. But when we had truly been sisters, friends, so much had changed. I glanced over to the garden. More half-memories stirred at the sight of the sunflowers poking up from the weeds. Once the garden had been lovely tended, but now it was all overgrown, all of it except for a single patch of black dirt. My eyes snared on that spot. Something about it felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I growled in frustration. Everything about this place was like a memory of a dream. Why couldn't I remember anything? Why did a part of me not want to remember anything? I was getting so frustrated I nearly turned around and stormed back inside. Maybe I could find a book or something to take my mind off of nothing seemed to make sense anymore. And then I saw it, the most beautiful blue butterfly I'd ever seen. It fluttered off the back porch and danced around my head before floating lightly over the edge of the yard, where it landed slightly on a tree, fluttering its wings as if it was waiting for me. I glanced around. Mom and Josie were out of sight and wouldn't be back for hours at least. The donation center was in the next town over. Josie's warning floated through my head. Don't go to the house in the woods. It was Grandma's rule, and I knew it had been to keep us safe, but I needed answers. I needed to know if she truly had been losing her mind, or if there was something that we needed to keep safe from. And the only way to find out was to seek it out myself. I took a step towards the woods, and the butterfly took off from the bow. Fluttering down the path, I could just barely see through the underbush. A chill raced over my back of my neck, and for the split second I swore I smelled Grandma Jeannie's perfume. It felt like she was there, warning me, telling me not to go into the woods. Immediately, a pang of sadness speared my heart, but then the new emotion overtook anger. You left me alone here, I whispered to the wind. You said you would always be there for me, but you left me. This is all your fault. A cool breeze swept around me, and the scent of her perfume faded, leaving only a smell of wet grass and warming leaves. Blue butterfly wings flashed in the woods. Before I could change my mind, I followed the butterfly in. 23. I dropped 10 degrees the moment I stepped under the cool canopy. I always say that word wrong. Canopy of the trees. Honestly, it felt like entering a completely new world. The sound of wind was replaced with the chirping of birds and rustling of squirrels in the branches. Bugs buzzed happily about, weaving in and out of the sunlight, piercing in the foliage above, and ahead of me a blue butterfly floated sinuously, always a few steps ahead on the path I followed. With every step, my frustration, sadness lessened, until everything seemed like a distant memory. Josie, Mom, Chicago, even losing Grandma Jeannie, they were all replaced by the calm I felt in the woods. Why were we not supposed to go out here? This place felt magical. I didn't know how long I walked, but eventually the butterfly fluttered high into the tree. I watched it go, both sad and entranced as it flew into the sunlight. When I looked back, I found the house. It was like staring at a nightmare incarnated. The whatever joyous feelings I had before vanished at the sight of it. The yard was completely overgrown and stunted. Trees and vines that twined around the broken concrete. Bird feeders and tumbled mounds of stone. The house itself was decrepit, with the sagging roof and broken windows that gaped with an inky blackness that sent shivers through my limbs. And even though I knew that the place this old, this abandoned, should smell like must and moss and decay and breeze that seemed to whiff from the front door carried an unmistakable scent of baking chocolate chip cookies. I had been here before I knew it. Just as I knew that, tangled and overgrown as the front yard was, it was missing something. I just couldn't remember what. I don't know why I did it. Even as the bad memories tugged at the corners of my awareness, I walked towards the front door, which fell inward of broken hinges like a tired mouth. The scent of baking pulled me forward. Even though the memories pulled me back, I knew I should be afraid of this place. I knew Grandma's rules or no, that this was the last place I should want to be. But I was captivated. Something pulled me, an energy, a gravity, and I couldn't choose to turn away, even if I wanted to. I didn't want to. This was a secret. This was a way to get back to Josie, to show her I wouldn't be bullied anymore. I was going to do exactly what she told me not to. Then she'd learn not to push me around. Gingerly, quietly, I stepped past the front door. The floor sunk dangerously under my foot, but it didn't give way. Every step caused a creak that echoed through the hallway and raised the hairs on the back of my neck. The scent of baking was stronger in here, but there wasn't any sound. It didn't look like anyone had been in here for years, only rats. Spiderwebs stretched from floor to ceiling, and dust laying heavy on the shelves lining the walls, empty shelves. For some reason, that scared me. Hadn't there been something in those shelves before? Memories flashed. Dolls. This hall had once been lined with hundreds of dolls, all shapes and sizes, and all styles of dresses, all of them facing the wall, all of them silent, so silent it was practically a scream. And that was what had been missing from the front yard. There had been doll heads piled in the bird feeders, and giant doll bodies twined and veined in the bushes. Dolls had been everywhere, broken, shattered, or eerily whole. So where were they now? The question should have been enough to send me running. Memories kept tugging. I should know this. I should. But the gravity tugged harder, and I walked farther down the hallway. Light peeked through, cracked in the walls or broken windows, dampling the floor in patchy sunlight. The shadows were strangely thick, puddled with oil. They could have been hiding anything. Near the end, I stopped. Something was on the ground, right in the middle of the hall, hidden in the shadows, as if it had been placed there just for me to discover. A rock, a piece that caved in the ceiling. I bent down to investigate, even as a small, rational part of my brain screamed to run far, far away. The light shifted, and my breath caught in my throat as I realized what I was waiting for me. A doll. Chapter 24. The doll was definitely no cute child toy. She wore a dress that appeared to be nothing but long, tangled strands of black fabric, and the hands that poked from the sleeves as her dress had elongated fingers tipped with sharp black nails. Her black hair hung lank and gnarled around a pale porcelain face. Her eyes were black, void with scratches out of the edge like witchy black eyeshadow, with tiny pinpricks of white in the center with pupils. Should be. And her smile. It wasn't a friendly smile, but it was fang-fleeked sneer. As if she was feeling triumphed. As if she had succeeded in something terrible. I didn't want to know what it could be. Worse. Something about the doll was familiar. I tried to think back, but my memories lodged again against the wall for forgetting. I knew I should know about the doll, but I couldn't remember. How could I forget something this terrifying? "Who are you?" I whispered. I looked around. There was no one here. That was for sure. My footsteps were the only ones on the dusty floorboards. Strange still. Everything in the house was covered in dust and cobwebs. Everything that was except for her. She looked clean and new, even if her clothes were ragged and her hair a mess. I don't know why I did it. It was the same gravity that pulled me to and into the house for the first place. I reached out and touched her cheek. It was warm. Lights flashed between my eyes. Lights and a swirl of shadow and a scream. A high-pitched scream that made my eyes roll to the back of my head. And in the flickering, flashing lights and the feeling of the thousand needles poking into my skin, the world falling away, I shrunk to the floor. I saw a face. I saw Josie's face. Then the lights and the shadows overwhelmed me. The floor of the room spun out of control. I stumbled, reached out for the wall, and then the nausea cleared, and I managed to right myself. The terrifying doll was gone. Chapter 25. I goggled, pushing myself to stand, holding myself up against the wall to keep from falling as the whole room tilted. Or maybe I tilted. I wasn't certain. I squeezed my eyes shut and took deep breaths, counting slowly to 10. When I opened my eyes, the doll was still missing, and the deserted house no longer smelt like baking. Now it smelt like must and decay. And I wanted nothing more than to get out of there as fast as I could. I wobbled my way down the hall, keeping one hand out for balance and trying not to need it. The last thing I wanted was a brush against the cobweb, or worse, a giant fuzzy spider. Just the thought made me shudder. And did the question, was the doll still in there, hiding in the shadows, waiting for me, or was she part of my imagination, just as all Grandma Jeannie's warnings had been part of hers? I made my way out of the hall into the cool afternoon air. Any moment I expect the doll to leap from the shadows and attack me. The creeping silence was almost over. I knew there had once been broken doll parts out here. Where had they gone? Who had taken them? I took a deep breath of fresh air and slowly made my way to the path back to Grandma Jeannie's. Once I was out of the yard, I paused and looked back at the abandoned house. A shadow darted from the window, disappeared deep within. Chills raced down my neck, and my stomach turned over. I knew what I had seen, even though I refused to believe it. The nightmarish doll that had been waiting for me in the shadows. She had been watching from the window, and she hadn't been gone alone. Chapter 26. Where the heck were you? Josie growled when I got back to Grandma's yard. She and Mom were already home, but whereas it looked like Mom had gone back inside to continue packing, Josie was on the back porch waiting for me. She stormed off to the porch and grabbed my shoulder hard. Don't you dare lie to me, she hissed. She looked in my eyes as she spoke. I looked down at my shoes. You went to her house, didn't you? She accused. I can't believe you, she yelled. Do you have any idea what you've done? I can't believe you. You are just so stupid. Tears welled in my eyes, and I fell down to my cheek. I'm not stupid, I said, grateful I was able to get out at least one full sentence. You have no idea what you've done, she whispered. You looked past... She looked past me towards the woods. I've done everything I could to protect you, everything, and you've blown it again. Whatever happens, Anna, I want you to remember that it's all your fault. She pushed me away, then turned and stormed back into the house. I couldn't move. All I could do was stand there, sniffling back the tears, trying to convince myself that I had actually done anything wrong. No one had been in the creepy house. Nothing bad happened. But the doll, she was waiting for you. She was watching. And now that she's seen you, despite the warmth of the afternoon sun, chills raced down my spine, and I turned to face the shadow woods. Positive, I felt my eyes on the back of my neck. Nothing there. I squared my shoulders and headed back to the door. When I touched the doorknob, I heard it. A rustling, a whisper. Turned back to the empty forest. No, I had been imagining it. There was no one there. No one there. I opened the screeching back door. So, who had been calling my name? Chapter 27. Sorting through Grandma's things was even harder with Josie glaring at me. She didn't say anything, not with Mom there, but she didn't have to. I could feel her disappointment everywhere I turned. Whenever I passed her, she would whisper terrible things under her breath, insults that made me feel worse than I had before. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, and I excused myself to work upstairs on my own. Someone had to sort out Grandma Jeannie's room. I might as well start. I made sure I locked her door behind me. I didn't want Josie or Mom coming in. The moment the door closed, I leaned against it and sighed in relief. Like my room, this one hadn't been touched by Grandma Rampage. It was exactly as I remembered it. The bed was still made with the handmade quilt pulled tight. The long drapes were tied back to let in the afternoon sun, which glinted her barrier lined with photographs and old perfume bottles. The room even smelled like her, a dusty floral scent that immediately made me feel a little better. I took another deep breath. It felt like she was still here with me. I liked it. It made me feel safe. I took a step forward and placed a gentle hand on her bed. I didn't sit down on it. For some reason, that felt wrong, rude. I wish you were still here, I whispered. Tears welled in my eyes again. I don't know what's going on anymore. Everything seems so wrong. I wish you were here to tell me everything would be okay. Something clicked behind the barrier. I jolted and turned around. The scent of Grandma's perfume was stronger, but the room was empty, except hastily I walked over to the barrier. I could feel a draft coming from behind it. Could it be? I pressed my hand to the barrier and pushed against it, and a big piece of furniture slid easily, and it was then that I realized it was a tiny roller's. It slid a few feet right at the wall without a sound, and there in the wall was a crack of flickering light. I peered closer. Behind the barrier was a hidden door. Maybe 4 feet high, or practically hidden behind the furniture, a hidden room. Why did Grandma Jeanie have a hidden room? For a moment I considered running downstairs and telling Mom, but part of me knew that this was meant for me alone. Even though I couldn't understand why, I reached for the door and opened it slowly. Grandma Jeanie's perfume waved out, as if trying to convince me that this was okay and I was meant to be in here. When I stepped in and let the door close behind me, I gasped in amusement. The room was beautiful. The floor had been painted a deep black, and tiny silver stars glittered across a collection of constellations, and that continued up the wall, and the background fading from black to light blue. The ceiling was pale blue and purple, like a dawn sky. with even more stars scattering about the swaths of paint swirling around like a Milky Way. It felt like standing in the middle of the cosmos. A dozen candles burned brightly all around me, some dripping on the floor or tall iron pillars, while others hung from the ceiling in crystal scones. Herbs hung along one wall, dangling from pale silver thread as they dried, and low shelves lined the other walls, some holding old books and others holding jars and crushed herbs and glittery potions. And right across from me was a low steamer trunk with a plush blue velvet cloth draping over it. Two candles flunked a large leather book in the center. A folded note card sat on top of the book, waiting for me. Entranced, I knelt down in front of the trunk and reached for the note. Maybe it was my imagination, but the note seemed warm, and the book seemed to tingle under my touch. When I unfolded the note, Grandma Jeannie's perfume waved pleasantly over me, and all my frustration washed away. My dearest Anna, by now you've realized you're not like the other girls. You have a gift, one stronger than even mine. I only wish I could have taught you how to use it. I want to dearly, but I fear telling you the truth. I don't want to take your childhood from you. Once you realize the power within you, there is no turning back. There is no protecting you from those who would take your power from their own. But then, there is no hiding from yourself either. I can only hope this book will help in my absence. I love you always, Grandma Jeannie. Chapter 28. For a while I could only sit there staring at the note, reading it over and over to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. Grandma Jeannie said I had a power, memories, charmed, the dolls, the voices, the sleepovers, and they all seemed to swirl around the old leather book in front of me. I folded the note back up and slipped it in my pocket. Then I carefully opened the leather book. The moment my fingers touched the cover, the warm current of electricity shimmered through me. It almost felt like a cat purring. Inside the book were a bunch of strange and wonderful things that didn't make much sense. Star charts and ambulance sketches of herbs and all those auriputes like increasing luck and curing colds. Long poems in Latin that almost looked like spells. My heart started hammering wildly and my fingers shook. I paused and I put the book down, holding up and around the small room. For the first time since the funeral, things were starting to make sense. All the long talks with Grandma Jeannie about the nature of the universe and the language of birds and the other animals. The strange current of energy I often felt. She said she had heard and felt all of them too. Said that for women like us, that was perfectly normal, natural. Is this what she meant? She was a witch, and I was one too. Perhaps that was why this room felt so comfortable, so safe. Even with its unknown dried herbs, the bottles of potions and glittery, glowing constellations in here, everything I'd wondered about was made into reality in here. My fantasies were just facts of life, one of that Grandma Jeannie had known about and written about. My head began to ring as I skimmed through the rest of the pages. More star charts, more recipes, more beautiful drawings of plants with all their properties. I felt like I'd been spinning around too fast. My vision blurred as I read, and I could feel something trying to claw its way into my thoughts. Memories from my past, things I wanted to keep locked away, memories that needed to stay locked away. The one page in particular caught my attention. On it was an inky portrait of a monstrous woman with a jet black hair and robe, her eyes blazing white, and it looked a great deal like the doll I had seen in the cabin in the woods. Below it was a block of text. All these years, I have contained Beryl's evil in the house in the woods. Her magic springs from that cursed place, and no matter how hard I try, I cannot end it. Even after she's supposed defeat, I sense the magic emanating from that house. I have tried burning or tearing it down, but a supernatural force keeps all efforts from succeeding. The best I can do is contain the power there for as long as I can, but I'm growing weak, so I will be gone, and when I am, I fear that Beryl will return. I wish I could be there to stop her. I wish I knew how. After the life of trying to end her evil, I had done nothing but postpone it for another to handle. When she comes back, she will be limited to the woods so long as my spell holds. But it will not hold forever, and she cannot be released into the world. I stared at the figure on the page. Her eyes seemed to pull me in, her mouth widened in a monstrous animal sneer. A great ringing filled my ears, threatening to give me a headache. As memories banged against the walls of my mind, trying to get in, trying to be remembered, the light of the candle seemed to dim as memories pressed back in, like a great swelling ocean wave, rising up to take me over. The words on the page overcame my senses, threatened to pull me under, to drown me, and through it all I swore I heard Grandma Jeannie's voice, warning me, calling me, afraid for me, and the terrifying cackle coming from the woods. I closed the book and set it back on the trunk. Instantly the room came back into focus. I sat there, my breathing heavy, and listened hard. I could have sworn I heard something calling me, could have sworn I was no longer alone in the room. But I sat there, and breathing slowed, and I realized I was still alone. Mom and Josie were still clinging around downstairs. Whatever I've heard had been in my imagination. I considered bringing the book with me, hiding it in my room so I could read more of it later. But I didn't want to risk anyone else finding it, especially if Josie decided to root around in my room. If Grandma Jeannie had been able to keep this room secret for so long, chances were good I could keep it secret for a few more days. The question was, would I want to come back here, or did I want to keep all those bad memories locked safely away? Grandma Jeannie said I had a power, said this book could help me. But when I thought of everything that the strange power within me had done, using it again was the last thing I wanted to do. All I had done was get me in trouble. It had hurt my friends. Maybe Josie was right about everything. Maybe we should just get out of here as soon as we could and leave all of Grandma Jeannie's secrets and stories far behind us, where they couldn't hurt us. Whoever Beryl was, she was probably just a figment of Grandma's imagination. There was nothing in the world as terrifying as a creature on the page. It just couldn't be real, I hoped. So why did it feel like she was just as real as Josie or me? Chills raced down my spine at the thought of the monster like the one Grandma had drawn prowling the woods. That I know I would have remembered. Suddenly scared, I stood and turned to go. As I did, all the candles in the room flickered, and this time I knew it wasn't my imagination. Be careful, Grandma Jeannie warned. Beryl is watching you. Alright, and that is the end of chapter 28. I will see you guys in chapter 29 in the next video. Thank you guys for listening.